and everything for the audience is ultimately experienced through the eyes of the boys, in which, Brady and Judah did a marvelous job of depicting that. So it all kind of unfolds, and the audience has more knowledge, obviously, than the boys do.
So he starts to kind of come up with his own perception on life itself, on everything that he was taught could be wrong. And so I think 100% Max would more question his father's insanity than if vampires were real.
Now is the time to rid the world of a demon. King Demon himself.
You're insane.
Evil is real.
With the fact that I love the fact that it doesn't spoon feed it to you. We don't know, is this guy completely crazy and thinks he sees vampires, or does he actually see vampires? Is playing that mental state, is that more of a challenge when you're playing a character who firmly believes something that may or may not be true?
Well, that's the fun of it, right? Because it's sort of like when you interpret a character, particularly if they lean into dark stuff, right? We'll say, like, I never stigmatize a character um by saying they're good or they're bad or they're evil. And even if you're playing a character who's doing evil things, you have to sort of, as an actor, it's not that your job is to make the character sympathetic, but your job is to live that character. And Van Helsing, for all intents and purposes, is doing what he knows to be right and that which he believes. And in this, and I think in this film, and it reminded me a lot of the great Roman Polanski film called The Tenant, in
Mm-hmm.
which it's the same experience. You're not sure if this guy is seeing these things or if this is a descent into madness. And that was my job in this. And there's even right up to the end there, it's him trying to teach his boys um
And there
how
is a
to
moment. Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off
no no
there.
no no just how to navigate the world, in which he sees as a very dangerous place.
And I think that going to your stoicism comment, Van Helsing is very restrained through much of this, and we see those little micro bursts where it's kind of coming through. There is the one scene where he's helping the injured railroad worker, and
Yeah.
he does it without a second thought. There's really no emotion to it, but don't want to give away any spoilers. There is a heavy emotional moment in those final scenes that is just heart wrenching and challenging. What was that scene like to film?
Well, Jocelyn we all got on so well and didn't have time to bond or anything, but it was just such a marvelous cast assembled. That stuff was Yeah, that stuff is hard. But it's also fun because those are the kind of grace notes of humanity, which makes you kind of take everything back for a minute and go like, oh shit, I've really kind of misjudged this character, and I also felt that it was important to penetrate the membrane of that stoicism so that we could really see the depth of love that he has for Mina. And also, he's a doctor, and his calmness in that moment, in the way that he handles that, it's completely unemotional. It's academic, it's scientific, but he saves that guy's life. But he doesn't, because of his stoic nature and everything. It's purely him doing, as he says. He does God's work, right? Um,
Yeah.
so that it's those scenes were fun and challenging to do, but also not hard, because when you're working with really good actors um and good listeners, that you will find things that might not be on the written page, and those are the those are the great little jewels that occur. And when you have a director like Natasha, where I would say, look, I'm gonna try something.
Very excited to talk to both of you. This is just a beautiful film, and you don't get to say that very often about horror films, but it's just the way it's shot, the way that everything is structured. Beautiful, beautiful film, and both of you are so good in this. And I wanted to start, Brady, with you playing this character. What is more challenging, the idea of wrapping around the fact that vampires may be real or that your father might be completely insane?
From a character point of view, I believe that it is my father is insane, because through Max's entire life, he's never once doubted his father. Whatever his father says is real. And through the story, we see that Abraham has tried to prepare Max to fight these undead. And Max just goes along with it for a certain point of time. So I almost think he goes, if my dad says vampires are real, vampires are real. Like, there's no doubt in his mind. And I think through some of the cracks in Abraham's personality throughout the film, Max starts to question now everything. If anything was real that his father said, if this railroad company are they really bad people or are they good? So he starts to kind of come up with his own perception on life itself, on everything that he was taught could be wrong. And so I think 100% Max would more question his father's insanity than if vampires were real.
Awesome. And Jocelin, this character is just as iconic as the story of Dracula itself. Mina has been such a huge proponent. I remember years ago reading a novel called Mina about what happened to her after, but here it's almost like we're seeing, was she a victim of gaslighting or PTSD? Is she somebody who actually experienced these things or led to be the belief that she did? What was it like inhabiting this version of Mina?
Yeah, I think you put your finger on it. She was attacked by Dracula in some way, and I think it's easier for her to accept Abraham's explanations than to deal with the trauma that she went through of this attack. So there's always this cognitive dissonance of where she can't question it because it's too painful. But I think in this movie we see her, really deteriorating, and as she's getting more ill and closer to death, I think she's coming to clarity about what happened to her, and I think she's realizing that she has to protect her kids from her husband as much as she does from this idea of some supernatural. So it was very complex and tragic. I think she's coming to these realizations too late.
And you've been in other horror films before, different genre films. This one, did it feel like you were making a horror film, or did this just feel like a drama that happened to have vampire elements to it?
Yeah, this film and Joe's story is so rooted and grounded in the family dynamics, and Natasha is so good at really finely drawing these relationships. So that was, I think, kind of like the vibe of the scenes and as we were acting them. But then Brady and I did get to have some of the, classic horror moments with Dracula, and those were super fun. So certainly on those night shoots when we got to do that, those felt like, nothing feels like a horror movie in the middle of the night unless you're screaming. There's bats and blood, and we got to do that. So.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBLo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.